My grandson called me a gold digger because I married his father, who was living on my dime, and I got angry with him because I didn't tell him what he did wrong when he wrecked my car. To give you some history, Thomas and I have been married for 2 years after dating for 6. He was married before and had a child from that marriage who is now 19 years old. Sadly, his first wife died of a stroke about 5 years before we met. Rob, his 9-year-old son, took it very badly. As a kid, he was very troubled, and his problems got worse as he got older. The first time I met him, I didn't like getting to know him at all because he was very honest about the fact that I would never be able to replace his mother and that he would never accept me into the family. I wasn't even remotely interested in doing that. Even though I tried to be friends with him, the kid only wanted to make sure I broke up with him and went on. Thomas told me they did everything they could think of, but he still didn't seem to want to get better. I had also told him about it, and I suggested that he take Rob to therapy to help him deal with his worries. After the death of his first wife, Thomas had given up on dating for a long time. But after meeting me, he changed his mind. I was pretty much the first serious woman he dated after his wife died. He had been on a few dates that year, but no one except me was able to get him to agree to a second date, and he told me that right away. Thomas has always been very honest and open with me. I was also told that Rob would not be very friendly because he is still sad about the death of his mother. That's why he wanted to take things slowly with me before bringing me to the family. So, we were really together for a year before he finally brought me home. Even back then, Rob was really mean to me for the first few years. The only things he could do were be rude and throw fits at me. I stopped paying attention to him soon after because it wasn't worth it to try to reason with him, even though at first I would try to understand and be nice to him. I had also told Thomas more than once that he needed to do something about his son's behavior. Thomas would sometimes scold Rob, but it wouldn't work because Rob would just go back to doing what he normally does. From then on, I truly and deeply loved Thomas with all my heart. This made me realize that I had to make things right with him no matter what. So I stuck with him for more than 6 years, even though he always let his kid off the hook. But recently something happened that made me decide to change. Around the time I agreed to his offer, Thomas had also started a new business 3 years before. Sadly, it didn't work out, and even though he's been trying to bring it back to life for a few years, his finances haven't gotten better. I let him try to run his business for almost 3 years because it was his love. I told him he should go back to work or find something else to do because it was clear that things weren't going well for him when they still hadn't taken off. We've mostly lived off of my money for the past 3 years, so I started telling him a few months ago that he should give up his business and try something else. I'm worried because my pay isn't enough to support my family, and when I retire I won't have much money left over. So my goal has been to gently lead Thomas in the right direction. His refusal to give up was very stubborn. He kept giving me reasons not to give up, like he needed more time to work on his business plan. Even though I really wanted to understand, I knew this wasn't working and I couldn't keep helping him. I think his son heard us talking about it because we had been fighting a lot lately and thought I was trying to get money by telling Thomas to sell his business to anyone who was interested and go back to work. I found that very hurtful because I've always been able to take care of myself and not look for money. Being told that I needed my spouse's money when it was actually the other way around was something I couldn't stand. A few weeks ago, when I told Rob to do some jobs, he told me he wouldn't do what I said because I was a worthless jerk who only cared about getting rich. I was clearly shocked, so I asked him what he meant, and he told me why he said what he did. Because of this, I wanted to address Rob when he called me a gold digger. That being said, I had asked him for advice before I could correct him. After stopping the fight, Thomas told me not to tell Rob that we had been depending on my money for a long time. Rob didn't want to lose his good name in front of his son because he thought it would be very embarrassing to admit that he was having money problems. It would be embarrassing for Thomas to show his kid where he had fallen, so I gave in. Thomas begged me not to tell him the truth, but I paid for it because Rob started to use the fact that he thought I was looking for money against me after that day. This made it very tempting for me to tell him the truth. Things became more difficult for me, but I had to be quiet for Thomas's sake. Once Rob got back from his winter break, I knew he would be going in a few weeks. I only had to deal with him for a few weeks because I had long-term dealt with his bad behavior for years. I didn't think it would be too hard. However, I think Rob meant to go the extra mile this time to make things much harder for me. Thus, a few days ago, he took my car without my permission and crashed it right before I was to leave for a very important meeting that we had been talking about for days. I usually leave for work at 9 in the morning. I had to leave early that day, though, because I had a meeting with a very important customer. I am so glad that I had planned ahead. Before I did, Rob had already started getting ready, so when I went outside to check on my car, I saw that the hood had a big dent in it and the sides were badly scratched. There was Rob standing next to the car with the keys in his hand and a happy look on his face, like he had done something great, which made me even more angry. I was clearly let down. Neither my husband nor I had left for work yet at that time. It drove me crazy when I saw him and what he had done to the car. I started freaking out at him. Violence isn't something I normally do, but that day I lost it and hit Rob in the face. I don't really feel bad about it. Someone named Rob tried to push me, but Thomas came out of the house and stopped him before he could do anything. I was upset because I couldn't drive that car to the meeting right now, even though it wasn't a big deal. For me, my car was very important because it was one of the first things I bought with my own money. I couldn't imagine taking a taxi to a meeting with a very important client that was so important to my job. It would only seem a little odd, and I was just as mad as everyone else about what had happened. But Rob didn't seem to feel bad about anything. In fact, he was yelling at me while his father tried to stop him and told me that this should show where I belong. At the end of the day, I knew that he thought it was silly that I had been talking about this important meeting for days and that I was too proud for someone who depended on my husband for money. Since I would be living off of his money, he wanted me to know how fake and funny I was. Then, he kicked my car again, called me a gold digger, and spat on the ground, even though Thomas tried to stop him. I was continuing to yell at him, telling me that this was my punishment for trying to get his father to sell his business so I could get more money. I told Thomas everything because I thought I could no longer lie to him. I felt like he earned it, so I tried to be as mean to him as I could. Though I was an adult woman fighting with a male 19-year-old at the time, I didn't care. All I wanted to do was hurt him. I told him that his dad's business had been failing for 3 years, and that I had been carrying their big load. Instead of being grateful for my help, he tried to put me down. Furthermore, I told him that I would now be paying for his college costs, so it didn't matter that his father had earlier promised to repay me as soon as possible. Because of this, he had no right to treat me that way or call me a gold digger, since they were the ones who needed the cash, not me. His face showed that he was in a state of complete shock and stillness, which was clear in both him and Thomas. I wiped away my tears and got ready to leave. I called a taxi to take me to the meeting place. Because I didn't want him to enjoy seeing me cry, I didn't even look around. I got there and left early enough for the meeting to go smoothly, thank goodness. But it was probably all in my head. I had plenty of time to calm down and act like I was serious, and the fact that I decided to fly in a cabin instead of my own car didn't seem like a big deal. When I got home, my car was still where it was, so I called a friend who owns a car repair shop and asked her to take care of it. I don't know why, but seeing my car in that condition made me feel bad again, so I chose to stay outside the house. I got in another taxi and went straight to a nearby hotel. I haven't been back home since. I felt embarrassed in my own home because Thomas couldn't talk to his kid about it, and I was sick of it all because of the state of my car. After that, I couldn't go back to that house and try to make things right with them because they definitely didn't deserve it. The next day, after I got back from my meeting and checked into my hotel, I kept waiting for Thomas, if not him, to call to see how I was doing. But that didn't happen either. I cried myself to sleep one night, and when I woke up, I knew I couldn't live with these people anymore, and that love by itself wasn't enough to keep a relationship going. It was decided that I would call my lawyer and tell him I was going to file for divorce. I called my brother right away and told him I didn't want to meet Rob or Thomas. Instead, I wanted him to come to my house, pack some things, and then bring them to me. After hearing a short story about what happened, he helped me by giving me my things. But Thomas went home to get my things instead of me, so I guess he knew I wasn't going to be back home soon. And he and his kids started texting and calling me all the time. I turned off all of their alerts because I didn't want to think about them, but I didn't ban them because I was interested in what they had to say. I finally decided to read the messages they had been sending me before going to bed. What I found was that all they were trying to do was say sorry and offer to make things right again if I could just communicate with them once more. I thought Thomas would say that, but what really shocked me was that Rob even said sorry and tried to show me that he was ready to grow as a person and say sorry. But it was clear to me that they were only trying to get in touch with me because they needed my help, so I wasn't going to fall for it right away. If Thomas really felt sorry for everything, he should have called me that day to say sorry. He wouldn't have had to wait long to figure out that I wasn't going to make things right by going back to my house, even when I didn't come back that day.
He didn't call me. In fact, he didn't even feel the need to call me until my brother came back to get my things. Because of this, I thought his apologies were very hollow and pointless, and I didn't even need to ask twice why Rob was saying sorry to me. I saw that he needed to find a way to pay for his own schooling, and up until now I had been paying for his fees. He still needed my help, since he had 2 years to go before he graduated. I'm his only hope because Thomas, being the lazy brat that he is, couldn't really help him because he doesn't have any money. He likely didn't even think about the fact that he could have worked or borrowed money to pay for college like most of us do. I felt really let down even though they said sorry, because I knew they were just saying it to get out of it and not because they really felt bad. I finally realized that I loved Thomas more than he did, and that he didn't deserve my love. Even though it took me a long time to figure this out. For 6 years, all he had done was promise to make things right between Rob and me. But he had only gotten Rob this far by telling Rob to change without ever really taking responsibility for his actions. It was time for me to put myself first and let him go. Rob had finally worked up the courage to act this way, because he really thought he would get away with it. I told my lawyer about the split, but I also told him I was going to sue them for the harm they've done to me. I decided to write back to Thomas after reading those notes and seeing how sorry they were. After waiting calmly for them to change their ways, I told him that I was going through with the divorce and that he had no power over me. But since it wouldn't happen again, I also didn't want to wait around and put up with being treated badly over and over again. When I woke up the next morning, he had sent me another 100 texts, begging me to stay and saying they would do anything to make sure I was there. He also tried calling me many times at night, but I was asleep and turned off his alarms, so I didn't know he was trying to reach me. In his texts, he seemed like he was really ready to do whatever was needed, but I knew he was just saying these things to get attention because he had done it so many times before, and that's when I got really annoyed. I gave in to him before, but this time I decided to set a limit and see if he was willing to help me get things in order. If not, I might come back. Since I had already made up my mind after a lot of thought, I was only interested in hearing what he thought. I wasn't going to break my word. There was no way I was going back. I wrote him back and told him that I would talk to couples counseling and stay with him if he promised to never talk to his son again and get rid of Rob from his life totally. I told him there was no other way out of this situation and that I would go ahead with the divorce until he was ready to do so too. A few hours after I gave him my choice, he sent me another message. They said Rob didn't know what to say to me because he only had them. I put him in a tough spot, and he needed time to think about it. He loved me, though, and didn't want to give up on us. He begged me not to get a divorce, but I told him it would be easier for him if I didn't get involved. The fact that he was even thinking about it showed that neither Rob nor I were that important to him. Then, I think he realized that I really didn't want to go back to him. Then he said I was playing mind games with him and trying to control his thoughts. After that, I turned off my phone because I didn't want to talk to either of them anymore, because his tone was making me so mad. I saved that conversation as a picture and sent it to Rob. After I emailed Rob the photos, Thomas left the house because he thought it was embarrassing that his dad was considering cutting ties with him to save his marriage. Since then, 2 days ago, Thomas has done everything he can to get in touch with me. Thomas thought that both of us had messed him up, so he blamed me for starting the whole thing. Yelling at me and saying that I'm to blame for his present situation, but I don't feel too bad about it. I thought this was a small way to get back at him for supporting his child and mistreating me over and over again for 6 years. Compared to what I've been through, this is nothing at all. He has been saying that he worked hard to keep Rob and I in a good balance, and that he was always worried about our happiness. But I remember never being happy. Anyhow, I don't really feel bad about what I did. But my brother thinks I should have just let it go instead of trying to make things worse between them. He told me that it wasn't worth it, and he usually tells people not to get payback, so it fits with who he is. I don't know if I should feel bad about it or not, and my mental health isn't solid right now, so I need other people to back my choice. Ida, does that mean I work to make my soon-to-be ex-husband and his kid fight, since they have always hated me? Update you guys, I stayed with him because I liked him, and when you ask someone, you let them pull strings on you. I didn't realize for a long time that he might not love me as much as I loved him. These are the kinds of things I think people do when they want to take advantage of you. That's exactly what went through my mind, so I won't let it get to me. Someone who willingly acts like a slave is not the same as someone like me who was lied to in the name of love. It took me a long time to realize that I was the only one who had to give up things to keep our relationship going, which was not fair. Some people might think I'm weak because I spent so much time with him, but I don't really care. Of course I still care about him, but I finally had the guts to break up with him. And that, in my opinion, is a big achievement. So, I'm not going to let myself feel bad about it. Like many other people, I made a mistake. Also, I think everything is fine. I want to say thank you to everyone who has been nice to me, even those who haven't. I don't really care. First, I'd like to thank everyone who has helped me and said nice things about my work. It goes without saying that I'm ending the marriage. Additionally, Thomas was served with the divorce papers yesterday. He had been living on my money for 3 years, so I don't think he would fight. But I guess we could have a snack. I have asked for a large amount of money as payment. I would also like to be paid for all of that. But because of his current cash situation, I don't think he would be willing to pay me back right now. But don't worry, we can always work out a long-term way to pay you back. That's not even a problem right now, though. If he tries to tell us what the rules are during our mediation meetings, we will leave with all of that. Some people are worried that what I did with my brother might have made things worse between us. It wasn't very important. My brother doesn't like to argue, so he didn't try to cut me off or tell me to say sorry for them. He just told me that he didn't think it was a good idea to talk to them anymore and get back at them or anything like that. I'm sorry if it seemed too emotional, but it was only an idea. We haven't talked about it since. We both don't think it's important. This is great because Rob and Thomas haven't tried to call me in a few days. All I want is some peace and quiet and nothing to do with them. I moved out of the hotel I was staying in and am now living with a friend. I hope no one comes here to try to find me. First, hello to everyone. Today is the first day of our mindfulness lesson after a few weeks. Tomorrow is the day. As I expected, he doesn't want to give me the payoff money I've asked for. The fact that his kid ruined my car makes that seem odd. He must have forgotten that he promised to pay me back, so he should agree to do that at the very least. He hadn't signed any papers or deals. I'm sorry, but I've gotten a lot of texts from him that are just normal conversations. He said he would pay back all the fees I paid for as soon as he has the money to do so. Even though I don't have a contract, I think it will work for now. People who are asking why I left home should know that it's a rented place. I moved out even though we had been trying for years to figure out how to split the rent, because his name was on the lease and I didn't think it was worth fighting for. Just as soon as I find a flat close to where I work, I'll be leaving my friend's house and living on my own again. My brother has his own family. And while they've tried to make me feel welcome, I can't really live with them. I don't want to make anyone give up their space either. But that's how things stand right now. Hopefully the divorce negotiations will end soon so I can move on. I've already been trying to forget about Thomas by focusing on my work and moving on. Moving on is hard, even though I know he was bad for me and that it's best for me to do so. But I know I have to deal with him tomorrow, even though I don't want to, because I will always like him. Who knows? He might do something wrong, and I'll grow to hate him. I can only hope for the best in this case. If I post any more updates, it will definitely be after the divorce. I'll be very busy for the next few months until the divorce is finalized, and I don't think I'll have time to keep you guys up to date on everything that happens. Good luck to all of you. Message 3. Hi everyone. It's been a while, you guys. Thus, as I had promised, I have come back after getting divorced. My divorce was finalized last week, and it's been about 7 months since I last wrote. I haven't stopped partying since then because the last few months have been really hard and stressful for me. But now that it's over, I've been spending more time with my family and friends. In fact, I'm getting ready to go on a trip with some high school friends to Greece. As long as I have the chance, I will try to enjoy every moment of my life as it is now. I don't want to talk about how awful the divorce process was. But at least I got all the money I was owed back plus some extra, because he couldn't give it to me all at once. Since then, Thomas has been acting like a victim on social media, and most of our common friends have taken his side. They think I was too quick to file for divorce and that I never really loved him, because it was so easy to get over my ex. They've been calling me the gold digger and the most selfish person they've ever met ever, since I took back the money they owed me. I don't understand how that makes me the bad guy. Anyway, I'm glad these people have shown who they really are, and I can say for sure that they were never my real friends to begin with. As I said before, I cut ties with them and everyone else who backed one side of the divorce because I don't need this kind of negativity in my life and will now be enjoying it to the best. My family and friends are all I have left, and I feel like I've found myself again.